The Message of Geoffrey the Great, Chapter 2. Lost in thought as he rode toward the castle, he finally looked up and came to his senses. This truly was a different world he was entering. He saw this mass of stone grow larger by the hour, the colors of his lord waving on flags far above the earth where he lived, and he suddenly felt small again. He would have to make sure he stood properly, walked properly, and talked properly, if he was to make a positive impression and not embarrass his friends and family. How would he do it if the life he had known was the life of a peasant? After several hours of riding through the cool of the morning, he finally arrived, ahead of schedule. As he dismounted, he felt the soreness in his backside caused by hours seated on his horse. He quickly forgot this, however, when he noticed the castle in front of him, or rather, when he felt the castle notice him. The size was overwhelming, and it was as if the many towers were looking down at him, its windows like eyes assessing his worth, as his village had done the day before. He shivered. Where was he? The monsters he dreamed of were frightening, to be sure, but they paled in comparison to this monolith in front of him. Who could build such a thing? The stink of the moat was equally overpowering, its acrid stench palpable, and like thick fog it could almost be felt as he walked. "Who goes there?" a voice bellowed from the other side of the moat. "'Tis Geoffrey, the lad our lord requested to deliver a message to his peer." "Wait there," the voice responded, though Geoffrey could still not see who it was. What sounded like a huge key unlocking an even larger door, the sound of gears turning, started as Geoffrey watched the drawbridge begin to lower. He had never seen anything like this, and he stood as tall as he could and steeled himself to be seen by knights and ladies and other important figures. Then, as the drawbridge settled in the earth opposite the castle, he saw someone emerging from the darkness on the other side. This was the moment Geoffrey had turned over and again in his mind, the moment he wanted so desperately to get right for the sake of his reputation among his peers back home. He stood as tall as he could, hands taut at his side. Then, with a few drops of perspiration trickling down the back of his neck, Geoffrey noticed who it was in front of him. It was a peasant like him. Geoffrey relaxed a little as the diminutive old man in front of him stood in front of him for a moment. The man craned his neck and narrowed his eyes as he looked at Geoffrey, as if he was trying to find a flaw in Geoffrey's character. "I suppose you're the one they sent. Well then, be on your way. This will show you where to go, and this," he handed him a sealed scroll, "is what you will give to Lord Thomas. Do not fail to arrive by tomorrow afternoon. He expects a lad like you to be there by that time. Off you go then. Hurry now." The man returned across the bridge, not so much looking back at Geoffrey, as just as quickly as the bridge had been brought down across the moat, it now drew back to its place, stopping boys like him from ever entering. His shoulders fell. He looked down at the two scrolls in his hand. One was unsealed, and as he opened it, he saw that it was a map. What was in the other hand he dared not open. It was made of vellum, that writing material that he had heard about and that was made from sheepskin, something he had never felt before but had seen carried by pages who delivered messages from the Lord to his hamlet. Looking around for a moment, Geoffrey shrugged and then returned to his horse, and with a click of his tongue and the squeeze of his legs against the horse, he was off again. It took him several hours to get far enough away for the castle behind him to disappear from sight, and as dusk settled over the forested landscape around the path on which he rode, he felt alone for the first time. He had never been this far from home before, and the bravery he had felt in his daydreaming seemed odd now as he thought of what could be in the forest around him. He thought it best to stop for the night in a clearing. There was a pond, and he led the horse there to drink before kneeling to scoop his hand down for himself. After gathering bark and other wood, he started a fire, and before long his eyes felt heavy and he fell asleep. A nudge awakened him at dawn the next day. He opened his eyes to his horse pressing its nose against him several times, as if to warn him of something. Bleary, he sat up and looked around. Then, before he saw it, he heard what the horse was alerting him to. There was a rustling in the trees not 50 feet away, and then there emerged from the forest a bear cub. It stopped dead once it saw Geoffrey and the horse, and it began to raise its head and cry, its squeals louder than those of the cows, sheep, and goats back home. Then it stopped, and what came next caused the hair on Geoffrey's arms to stand on edge. Another bear emerged from the forest, this one obviously an adult, and apparently the mother of the cub. Already still, Geoffrey froze to become statuesque. This was not strategy, it was biology. As hard as he tried to refocus his attention and get to safety, Geoffrey could not think, and just as bad, he could not move. He felt suddenly cold as he watched the bear loaf toward him, huffing as it neared. The bear nudged the cub as it passed, and he saw the horse in his peripheral vision backing away as it lifted and dropped its head. The bear lowered its own head and started sniffing around the camp, lumbering with heavy steps. When it reached the now dead campfire, it dug in the ashes a little and sneezed. Just feet away, Geoffrey's eyes widened as the bear started sniffing him. He could not think of what to do, even though it seemed like his life depended on it. The bear seemed interested for just a moment, however, and as quickly as she had come, she turned around and collected her cub to return through the silhouetted trees. It took several minutes for Geoffrey to recognize that he was no longer in danger, and still longer to relax his muscles and begin to move again. By this time the horse was far behind him, but to its credit it had not run, for whatever reason. After a few more minutes, Geoffrey gathered his strength and got up. He shakily approached his horse, mounted, and rode on, very slowly. The rest of his journey was almost uneventful, save for the rushing river that Geoffrey rode parallel, with its salmon leaping upward, and for the occasional howl of a wolf. Then he saw his destination. It was another castle in the distance, this one seemingly even larger than the one he had left. Geoffrey stopped for a moment to take it in. The clouds themselves seemed impressed by this feature of the landscape, hovering above as though listening in on what occurred inside. It took him another few hours to reach this castle, and as he approached, he noticed that there were fewer villages surrounding it compared to where he lived. Those he did pass were not villages, but the remnants of villages, hollow structures with charred wood frames, collapsed stables, barren plots of what used to be farmland. Most importantly, there was no sign of man or beast anywhere. He did see evidence of men, but this was not reassuring, for it was arrows stuck in the earth as though shot from a distance. A battle, perhaps an attack, seemed to have occurred here. He had little time to consider this, for the afternoon was quickly approaching. He quickened his pace and arrived at the castle by late morning.